we don't play this clip or discuss right use of bodies. I mean, it is for you to understand where the church is coming from and why there is an articulation of, what you do with your sexuality matters. I think everyone in the world would, every thoughtful person would admit that that's true. It does matter. People might just disagree on what constitutes inappropriate or appropriate behavior. But I do consider you to, I invite you to deeply consider the question, how do I form my understanding of what right use is? That's my invitation for you today. And I'm happy to discuss that with you if you ever have any questions about it. I'm available in the parish office. Only because, it's such an important part of who we are as people. It really is. It's intrinsic to who we are. It is the fullest and deepest way that we can give our lives away. Of course, the Catholic Church is going to weigh in on this because we are obsessed with figuring out how to live correctly, how to live well, how to love well, how to make the world the best it can be, how to be Christ in that world, how to love it radically. So of course we're going to have, of course the church is going to weigh in on this sort of deep way that we give our lives, our very selves to another person. But we use this today to turn to, as a context, to turn to a more serious topic, the topic of the sex abuse scandal in the church. For those of you who may know less about it, I'll just briefly describe. In 2002, there was an article released by the Boston Globe this was when the abuse scandal broke in the church. And the abuse scandal was the sort of uncovering of decades of abuse by priests with abusing minors sexually, and it being covered up by the church. And priests using their position of power in local communities to cover it up, which is very sad. Very sad. Many individuals were traumatized for not only their young lives, but their implications of this for their whole life. I mean, this is something that they have to come to terms with. And so this is a grounding, this understanding of Christian anthropology. How do we use our bodies correctly? No one in the church condones what those priests did. In 2002, the story breaks, and people begin having legitimate questions about Catholicism. How could this faith that professes to be sort of the way between our human existence and God, the way to heaven, how can it house such bad people? And when confronted with the reality that its own priests were being so evil, how can it cover it up? These great, very legitimate questions in response to just an absolutely horrendous and unlooked for systemic problem in the church. In 2002, the story breaks. In 2018, a story emerges regarding the sex abuse scandal in Pennsylvania. Former Cardinal Theodore McCarrick, who helped with the 2002 abuse scandal recovery project, it comes out that he has, in fact, abused many individuals himself, and has contributed to a continuation of this abuse scandal. So in 2002, this really rocked the world, the whole world, not just the Catholic world. And in 2018, we were sort of shocked to learn that it wasn't completely done away with, despite all of the structural changes. So as I said earlier, this is the context in which we undertake our contemporary practices of safeguarding. That is either via video or in-person session. Everyone at the parish has to be trained to interact with young people, to document interactions, to make sure that there's enough adult volunteers or chaperones to accommodate the group of kids, to make sure you're never alone with a kid in a room, etc., etc. All in the interest of avoiding these scenarios. We build up the Catholic community in such a way that this never happens again. And from me to you, I deeply hope and pray that your experiences with priests in your past have been good. No one should have to live through the sort of abuse that we've seen. But we're going to turn to a video from Father Mike Schmitz regarding the sex abuse scandal that broke in 2018, the Pennsylvania abuse scandal, and his thoughts on it. It's heavy material, but I do believe that it's valuable for us as Catholics to know, because this is a thing that people are, it's the biggest headline the church has made in recent years, hands down. And I spent some time over in Ireland doing ministry there, and the cab drivers would always ask, they could tell we were Americans, "Why are you here in Ireland? What are you doing?" And we'd say, "Well, we're working for the church." Every single time their response was, "Why would you work for the church? Why would you do that?" Their priests, and Ireland had a particularly rough go of this, their priests abused minors. There's no good response for this. It happened. It happened, and the only appropriate response in a cab with a guy who's driving us to our destination, who says, "Why would you work for the church? I have family, I have friends who were abused by clergy." There's no other response other than to listen. It's not the time to say, "Yes, but the church has the fullness of truth and intrinsically a deeper and more meaningful and more profound way of viewing the world." No, the cab driver's not going to care. This caused so much pain and so much hurt in our world. We cannot ignore it. And that's why we take the time to watch these videos, to do this whole session on safeguarding, why we do it, how we relate to other people, why it is fundamentally and absolutely inarguable that the abuse that happened at the hands of clergy is terrible. Terrible and unacceptable. And we have to learn, we've had as a church to learn, how do we make sure this never happens again? How do we make sure that we don't systemically hurt people this profoundly again? I think the church is heading in the right direction. But watch these compelling thoughts from Father Mike Schmitz on the matter. And take this as a chance to think more deeply about who we are as people and as Catholics. I mean, how do you personally, what do you make of all this? What do you make of it? This is part of our historical moment as Catholics. A very difficult thing that we're being asked to respond to. And many people have fallen away from the faith because of this scandal. So enjoy Father Mike Schmitz on the matter, and I'll check in with you after you watch the video.